play my own game.
That looks like NASL soccer on the Intellivision.
Come on, score! Well, it doesn't look like one, but it is a computer. And it just shows what can be done when a computer is designed specifically to produce good graphics and sound.
Very good graphics.
Things like this show us something that's likely to become very important. The future of computing is not just going to be screens full of figures and letters.
It's going to turn into a massive feature and Pro Evo franchise. Yes, this is the computer program episode number 6, Moving Pictures. This is about graphics and animation, and this first aired on the 15th of February 1982. Here we are with the familiar owl intro to warm our souls and boil our buttons.
Well, I've climbed hundreds of mountain peaks in my life, so I suppose I have a real urge to stand on top of the world.
He gets out and about, doesn't he?
Standing on top of the world, but I am stood on top of the sky. I'm stood on the roof of the London Planetarium.
Crazy fool.
Representation of the night sky. At the centre of the auditorium is a complicated projector that throws pinpoints of light showing satellites, stars, planets and nebula onto the inside of this globe.
They had one of those, similar sort of thing, like a Cinema 180 at the Pleasurewood Hills theme park near Lowestoft. It was amazing. It made me fall over once.
Devices that can project 8,900 stars onto this huge screen.
Because, you know, it moves and you kind of go with the image and you lose stabilization. Well, I did. Look at that. There's the moon right next to Jupiter.
Is simply an optical device throwing patterns of light.
It's bigger than... It's not Jupiter, it's Saturn, isn't it? What am I talking about?
Which spots to light up on a television screen to produce a picture.
Is that Voyager?
This is a computer-aided impression of the Voyager spacecraft.
It is.
Saturn's rings. The remarkable thing about it is that it was produced before Voyager got anywhere near to the planet.
That's quite impressive for the time. Wow, look at that. That is so 80s.
Well, even the world of advertising recognises the potential of computer graphics.
God, this is sinister, isn't it, for a shaving advert? Well done, mate. This is one trippy episode. What is going on? Subliminal messaging for kids.
Also been used experimentally.
It's Thomas the Tank Engine.
New art forms.
Having some sort of trippy dream.
Its graphic capability
What's going on?
Can also be used in a practical, though no less spectacular way.
Yes! Oh, it's like Thunderblade.
This is Chicago as it's never been seen before.
You're telling me this is like the Matrix.
Put up buildings, knock them down and move them around, and view the effect from every conceivable angle.
Wow. Now we are talking. I hope this music plays whenever you use this program. That would be amazing. It'd be worth starting up for that alone.
There's a place too for simply beautiful animated pictures.
This is the 80s summed up in a few frames, isn't it? Just a couple of minutes and this is the 80s. That's quite cool. I mean, this is 1982. It's very impressive.
Wonderful pictures, but to the computers which produced them, they were nothing but numbers describing which points on the screen to light up, when and in which colour. But how do you get the numbers into the computer in the first place? Well, you could feed them in through a keyboard.
Oh my word, I need his jumper, look at that.
The picture I've got on the screen here, you can see that would be very tedious. You'd have to type in every single position and every single colour and so on. So all kinds of devices have been developed to make the job easier. This one, for example, is called a graphics tablet.
They're the research computers which
is reproduced on the screen and stored
used to
away in part of the computer's memory.
be in schools before the BBC Micro.
Brush. But unlike any paintbrush, the computer will remember shapes and colours. And we've asked this one to remember a bird we drew earlier, and I can fill the sky with them just by moving the cursor and pushing the button. Let me show you what I mean. There's a little flashing dot of light, which you may just be able to see.
Oh, that's hard to see, isn't it?
Cursor. And then all I have to do is press the button and fill the sky with birds.
Impressive. Better than the pens, the optical pens that you used on the TV, the CRT TVs.
Like our computer owl. It takes a large number of pictures to move an object or a character smoothly from one position to the next. Now, is that something a computer can help us with, Mac?
Yes, it can, and even surprisingly, quite a small micro can handle it. For example, from this little shoot here up to a full blade of grass, we'd want to put all the intermediate growth in. But all it's really doing is taking the final picture and the start picture, drawing lines in between the two, and filling them in bit by bit.
Well, that's in principle exactly what happens with the in-between pictures, which are normally laboriously done by hand. Is a computer capable of doing that for a proper full-blown animation?
Yes, but it requires a much more sophisticated and powerful computer. For example, if you wanted to make the wings on your owl flap, the computer would have to know something about how an owl's wings actually flap, and it doesn't necessarily flap in one straight line. Of course, the computer doesn't recognise these shapes as such. All that it knows is the colour and the position of various dots. It can't tell what that picture is any more than that sweater knows about that rather curious owl you've got on your chest.
Don't diss the sweater, that is amazing.
Here, Chris.
He's unravelling. What's happening here? I don't like where this is going. This is bizarre. Do you think this is scripted, or they've just gone off the handle? They've just lost it. They look like they're having fun.
Look what you've done to my owl.
I wouldn't worry about that, Chris. Look, it's all in here.
He's not even dizzy. I mean, that's
code. You can reproduce it all. The knitting.
Impressive.
In other words, the order in which the stitches are going to go round.
Mac, will you...
Here you are.
What a complete douchebag.
Well, I thought you might say something like...
Yeah, you do it yourself, Mac.
It's really going to be quite difficult to re-knit that and see what sort of pattern emerges. So we've got something much simpler here. This is a plain stripe running down. Now, if we unravel this, like we did with your owl, and then re-knitted it again with a smaller number of stitches per line, per row, we get something like that, a diagonal running right across it. And if we vary the number of stitches per row in a rather formal manner, you could create yourself a little zigzag, and that's how patterns work in knitting.
This isn't the first time this program's gone back to knitting and
one pearl one. There's a whole list of
making
stuff
clothes.
Now, is that like the computer program feeding a list of stuff to the screen to make it create the pictures?
Well, in a very similar sort of way, it will tell it which spot to illuminate with which colour as it goes across, and it produces different colours, and thereby producing a pattern that looks to us like...
I think they spoke about the big looms, mechanical looms in factories in a couple of episodes before.
Of pictures and the ability to manipulate a design that makes computer graphics so useful in practice. Here's Jill Neville.
Just take a look at this bus timetable. It's a mass of times and names of places. With a bit of a struggle, I can work out what's happening. But
it's not that hard, is it? Come on.
If I wanted to know how to get from A to B, if all that information were represented graphically in a map showing where the buses run. Well, that project was given to Magda, a design student at the Royal College of Art. And on the face of it, it seemed simple enough, merely a question of drawing the bus routes along the appropriate roads. But Magda came across an unexpected problem, with which she needed the help of Brown Smith and the computer.
She wanted to be able to draw parallel lines.
I don't think Magda's been very successful, given we still use timetables.
When they met, followed a road, and you maybe had 4 or 5 buses going along together. Now, her difficulty was that it's extremely difficult to draw parallel lines, other than straight lines that you can use a pencil and ruler for. These lines had to actually go round, follow roads, and go round bends and so on.
Has he got a peace logo on his top? Is that an alien badge?
The road as a line into the computer, digitise that in, and then the computer would produce parallel lines following it. Get the program running. Okay, now if you just put in a sort of gesture, if you like, with that pen on the bit pad and more or less follow that line.
Just draw something, Magda.
Just to follow
That's
that
right.
line.
That's it.
And that'll come in on your screen over there. See that? And it said it can't divide by 0, and it stopped because it didn't like part of the that we drew in.
Divide by 0 error. You need to put better error trapping on your software, mate.
Solve. I should have learnt by now, and I certainly did after that, that reaction is normally incorrect. The simplest looking problems take the longest time. In fact, I thought it would take about a day, and I told her that on the phone in the morning. It took 2 months.
I love his cup of tea he's got going
The
there.
difficulty is that
Just like me.
something which is very simple for a 3-year-old person to do is extremely difficult quite often for a computer to do. Something which is extremely hard for a person to do might be done in 3 seconds by a computer. Frequently you can't tell. It did take a long time.
That's why computers are so cool.
On the plotter, well, let's see what that looks like.
And useful.
I'll say yes, we want to plot it. So yes, parallels, 2 lines again, and the same distance apart, let's say. And off it goes.
Off it goes with its felt tip pens.
We managed to get a program which would immediately produce parallel lines almost anywhere it's set that we wanted.
Ah, this reminds me of the BBC Turtles drawing on the floor.
It appeared to be going all right. It was almost malevolent. It would follow part of the curve around and suddenly zoom off to the side and have its lunch and come back again.
So they're trying to...
Sometimes about 7 of us around there, getting ready to thump it if it wasn't going to work right. This is anthropomorphizing it a little bit too much. The computer was doing exactly what it was told to do. The point is that I wasn't telling it sufficiently correctly what to do. As it made each mistake, we learned how to make it do better. And it, in essence, taught it what, of course, we were doing was teaching ourselves.
So we're trying to draw bus routes.
It says it can't continue because having altered that line, it actually did interfere with the program. Let's try it quickly again. Right. Try it really quickly to draw a line straight across there.
Who's Magda? Is he Magda or is she Magda?
That's it, lovely. And then hit the stop box again.
What's going on?
And it's working that out. It shouldn't take too long because it really is a very simple little curve. If it can't cope with this, I think we've had
Are
it.
they collectively known as Magda?
Now, it's joined on top of the old lines. We don't know. There's the first line. Is it going to do it? Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Just crack out a spirograph, mate.
Oh, that's really nice.
And it did work, and here's the result. So the next time you're in the west of Scotland standing at a bus stop, you'll know how those parallel lines were drawn.
Well, we won't because we're still using timetables.
How immensely valuable computer graphics can be for artists and designers and cartographers. But Mac, what about the businessman? How does computer graphics fit into his world?
Well, the computers are spewing out so much information, so many numbers, that it's almost impossible to find out just what's going on. So people have been trying to produce graphs like this, which might be a pie chart showing market share and so on.
Normally with pots of paint and a brush.
Yes, it takes a long time, and that can be done on a computer. But if you get some numbers like this, if you get that list of numbers, it's very, very difficult to really analyse what's happened.
Look at that keyboard, that is marvellous.
We just hit a couple of keys, and you'll see the forecast coming up now in yellow zinc. Those are the forecasts. And
Ah, look at that.
he's been behind there, and he's ahead there, and so on. It's
Monthly revenue versus thousands of pounds.
The red ones indicate what actually happened.
That's right.
Right.
Now, the real thing is, if you want to update this and change it, and this is where this little mouse comes in, where you can pick these instructions on the screen.
By sliding about
By just
on this
sliding
flat
about
surface.
on there. You have
Look at
3
that.
functions on it. One is to pick, which is
That's a weird mouse.
instruction. One is to say it's done.
The cable's coming out of the back of the mouse. Like a mouse. Rather than the front as we have now.
Here, it will move the cursor on the screen.
You're actually pointing.
Oh, I say as we have now. We don't even have wires really now, do we? We just have
Put one after that little job there.
Bluetooth mice.
And then we enter the value. So we'll put in, it only goes up to 800, so we'll put one in at 950 and see what happens. And that just shows you that it is correct and you've inputted it. So we've ended. You can see it's rescaled here. It's put the actuals in.
Chris is like, yeah, great.
Obviously, this is a fairly sophisticated business users type of thing, which would be certainly beyond my means, so expensive compared with a microcomputer. But is it the sort of thing that a microcomputer can do at all?
Yes, it is, and we can show you that. This one, which store 5,000 charts, but we can actually do on some really quite interesting stuff on a little micro like this. Now, what we have done...
Max, shouldn't you be making his jumper for him?
...to put some scales on the side here, and that's a little subroutine we've written, and it's rather...
Oh, look at that colour contrast.
The actual
Glorious.
just over 1,200 points along the bottom and 1,000 up. So along the bottom we're setting off or scaling up in hundreds, so 100, 200, 300 along the bottom.
I think every piece of paper from the 80s was either punched with holes,
So January is 100, February...
or a continuous feed, which is also punched with holes.
There's our little program that's going to do it.
Now, the first instruction is go sub 500, so at position 500 there is that subroutine which creates that graph.
Yeah, we're going to make the subroutine.
A little more complicated than this looks.
Yes, it's quite a detailed piece of program, but not very difficult.
All right. Now, if a month equals 1 to 12, that means nothing to me.
Well, that's the start of what we call a loop, and that's really linked into this thing next here. And as a piece of protocol, we've indented here what's inside the loop that we're going to do a certain number of times. So you can recognise those two.
Indenting is a kind of convention that you
Yes,
do that,
just
so
a
to remind
convention.
yourself where the loop is.
Right.
Okay. Print sales.
Oh, they're not going to show us the
It'll print the word
graph
sales.
subroutine.
Input sales is telling the computer to expect something called sales, which will be, in this case, a number.
Right.
Right.
Now, draw is another command you haven't seen before. So let's just go through it. For month 1, print sales. You will input the sales, and then it says draw, month 1 again, and this little star...
Chris sometimes seems like he's really
So it'll go
like-
on the bottom to position 100.
fed up or straining with this.
Sales, it will go up to a point of the number where you've got sales, and it will join that to the 0. And then
I can't tell which.
So it goes round the loop, and then it goes to 2. So it's doing in steps.
Round and round the garden.
3, 4, 5. So it goes 2, print sales, so you print sales for period 2, and then it draw 2 times 100, goes to 200, and it goes up and plots that point and joins it up to the last point.
And a lot of this is basic jargon, again, the language
Yes,
basic,
it's just
is that
basic.
Right? So if it seems puzzling, which it does slightly to me, I mean, once you've got the hang of the basic vocabulary, that would become more simple seeming.
Yes, the two things are always linked together. It's for months 1 to 12, for example, is always linked with something that says
Right.
next month. So it always does the next month, and every month, but 1 at a time, up to 12.
Well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. End is pretty obvious. So it's the end of the programme.
Yes.
That's a word I understand very clearly. Can we now run it?
Run it.
Do it.
It's asking you for sales in the bottom.
Yes.
Well, you want in multiples of 100, rough, or rather in the...
I miss making programs like this. Just simple programs. Just to...
Let's join it
It's
straight
climbed
up.
up to, and that is 500.
It's gone
I should really get back into it.
gone up to 500.
Well,
and
let's
connected.
imagine that February was a bit too cold for people to buy ice cream, so drop it down to 250. And there it is. It's very clever. And this is the sort of thing that the average business user could use.
Oh, yes, very easily,
And store
yes.
away on a disk and keep
He could store it
updating
and
month
then
by month.
recall it every month and update the next point. And not only that, of course, he could just print it out on a printer. So if he wanted some copy, he could get
There
it
we
printed
go.
out on a little
There's
printer
the-
like this.
The what's it called? Sheet fed paper? No, not sheet fed. Continuous feed.
I need something else. Many people think that computers won't be really useful to us until they can speak. Well, that's something they can already do. You may well have seen the little speak and spell machine, little thing available in toy shops.
Yes, indeed.
Teach you to spell. We go for level of difficulty D. Are you ready for this? You want to learn how to spell, Mac? Did you understand that
Why
word?
do the computers seem to sound like
I've
you'd
gone
expect
off it.
computers to sound like?
Would you say that again, please? I still don't understand it. What does it say? Plunger. Fine, that's quite enough of that. But how do you actually get the business of speech recognition and speaking into a computer?
Not going to program that in Basic, not today.
You have to break down the word. At least the current techniques is to break down that word into various sounds and intensities and so on. It gets very, very complicated. But we can do something even with a little microcomputer.
Even with a microcomputer,
yes,
you can teach it to speak, or
yes, you can
recognise speech.
Right. Well, I've actually put in a couple of words on this.
Right.
And perhaps you'd like to try and teach it another one with this microphone. So
try.
it is in the teach.
My, this is not Dragon Dictate, is it?
It's 6 times. So
Right.
it gets a profile of you speaking this word, and then afterwards we can see whether...
Although very impressive on a BBC Micro.
Cheap little system,
Well, we'll see if it's impressive.
Hold that there for a moment.
Right.
Now it's
So it's
T for teach or L for listen, is that right?
Teach. I'm going to teach it.
Okay, type your word.
Run up tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Return.
Good spelling, Chris. Well done.
Yeah. Tomorrow. 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 Tomorrow.
And this is the rest of the programme, is it? Sounds out to the end.
Now we're going to see whether it will recognise our 2 voices, and I'll start with my 2 words, and then you finish with tomorrow and see if
Okay,
it works.
go on then.
Right. We're going to get it to listen. L. C. It worked. That's good. I didn't think it was. U.
Beautiful.
Impressive.
Tomorrow.
Wow.
I think that's absolutely
Marvellous.
brilliant.
Well done, Mac. That's a marvellous programme, and it all in a little tiny box that size.
That's right. Well, you can imagine shouting.
As he smacks it, it resets.
Yes.
things
Switch
for
on
you.
the central heating, pull the
Yes.
curtain, switch on
It's
the
a-
telly, boil the kettle.
It
Wonderful.
is a long way from dictating a letter into it and getting it typed out on a typewriter, but that will arrive one of these days.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, speech recognition, as Max says, is
In the form of
future, and
Alexa.
intelligible computer speech is expensive. Music from the computer is already here today. Perhaps you may have seen this little gadget. It'll play notes in different instruments.
Wow.
And so on. What's more, it can even remember a tune played on it and play it back to you days later. Of course, this little keyboard is on the fiddly side, but attach a full-size keyboard to a microcomputer and the result can be an instrument that is capable of even more different sounds than a synthesizer.
Are they using a Dragon 32? No, it's an Apple, isn't it?
Use some of their special musical effects. But if you want to know how some of the stranger sounds on today's discs are produced, the answer, as often as not, is from a small computer like this.
The sound of the 80s. Yes. It's like watching Trapdoor or one of the 80s cartoons. You gotta love these early synth sound effects. They are truly cosmic, I would call them. Maybe that's just because they were used on so many sci-fi films in the 80s. So it's association rather than, I don't know, visceral feelings. And there we go, that's the end of the computer program episode 6, Moving Pictures. How nice it was. Oh, got a bit of tracking problems on whoever recorded this. Who did record this? These are available on archive.org. I'll link them below. Beautiful sounds. So I'll leave this to, I guess, sound out the rest of the video, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Outside the immediately creative sphere, what does a computer have to offer the artist?
It operates on a couple of important ways, I think. One, its use simply as a tool, like a pencil or a chisel or an airbrush or a flamethrower, whatever people...
A flamethrower?
You can get the computer...
Yeah, I'm still here.
on the screen.
I didn't realise this bit was going to happen.
On that, though, it can actually deal with the concepts that people are themselves dealing with when they're making art, so that if somebody...
I thought he had a peace sign on. He's talking about flamethrowers.
To get the computer to help them to do it, they have to look inside their own head, as it were, to understand how they make the marks that they make.
Oh, get out of here before you start tripping your private parts off. Thanks for watching. See you later.